Hi there, I'm Jodie. I'm a Child Health Project Officer within Medway Public Health Team, and I'm here to talk about how we can manage our wellbeing during the festive period. This time of year can bring a lot of pressures, it can be quite chaotic, so it can be really challenging. So I thought I would offer a session on how we can understand ways to protect our emotional health and wellbeing during this time, developing kind of coping strategies at pinch points, and then some information around accessing support over the festive period, and then finishing off with signposting for both local and national organisations. So let's dive in. So these are the outcomes of the session today. There will be information interweaved throughout the presentation, but this is what I'm going to be covering. And when I talk about support and signposting, this session will be thinking about the financial pressures, the physical, emotional pressures that we face. So if it is, there's different things going on for you and your family, not just about, celebrating this time of year, but there's additional kind of financial or housing stresses, then I will be including information about local services within today's session. So for now, I invite you just to take a look at this image. It's one that's quite reflective, and I encourage you to take a minute just to be with human beings, not human doings. If you're comfortable enough to just close your eyes and take some deep breaths at your own pace, and just take a big inhale and then exhale longer than your inhale. So you haven't anywhere else to be or anything else to do. You've committed to watching this. So let's just take a moment just to be and to not be thinking, doing. Um, so yeah, it's an invitation for a pause in your day. Now that was literally just 1 minute, and I trust we can spare 1 minute a day just to be present, just to check in with ourselves. So we can be mindful, even if it's making a cup of coffee. We can think about the change of the colour of the water, the smell of the coffee as we're making it, or we can just gaze and stare and be. So yeah, that's a way for us to manage in the little intro there. So I will dive into asking you what brought you here today. So, as I alluded to in the intro of the session, this time of year can be challenging. We can have children and young people around us, and we want to get them everything that they're hoping for, but that might not be possible because of affordability or the logistics of the ways that our family are. We may be co-parenting and sharing our time and then between our families, which can cause upset, frustration for everybody involved, and it's hard to navigate. Could be that financial pressure. We're living in really challenging times right now, so we can carry a lot of guilt or shame and worry and think that we need to deliver everything that they want. Um, so it's just sitting with what's brought you here. How are you? Is it thinking about we have to be around people sometimes that we wouldn't necessarily choose to be around? And relationships can be challenging, whether they're relatives, friends, romantic. So there's that person with covering their mouth, worried about saying things or upsetting people. It's really tricky, right? The festive period brings lots of emotions and hyperactivity, which can cause hyperactivity and hypervigilance, tension. Um, so no wonder it's bringing some uncertainty and concerns for many of us. Now, locally, we're really lucky to have our family hubs, and please do check out their videos on their Medway Council Facebook pages, and they've also got an app. But we've also got different communities that are offering toy banks locally, so you can access good quality, loved items that we can recycle. A lot of plastic toys go to landfill, and it doesn't decompose. It's not helpful to the planet. So you can do your piece at the same time to meet our climate change commitments, to recycling and re-loving different gifts. It's the same for adults. There's different goods and communities out there that are offering gifts for people that need that support over this time of year. We have our food banks locally too, and also other charities offering a cooked Christmas meal, some from Who Cares, and our community voluntary sectors like Caring Hands and what have you can provide meals or food at this challenging time. I'll also be covering the ways that we can manage those emotions around these different pressures and challenges, but I just wanted to invite you to think about what are you carrying and what might you be struggling to cope with. And it's okay to admit that you're not coping, and it's brave to ask for help. So I understand if you feel that you can't speak out about it, but there's organisations also that are willing to listen. We have our Safe Haven, there's different helplines, and I will be letting you know about them at the end of the session. But please be assured that it's okay to not feel happy or okay or excited about the coming weeks. So I invite you now to ask yourself how you are, like really. How often do we check in with ourselves? We quite often are concerned and considerate of people around us that we love and care for, making sure that they're okay and they're happy. But how often do you do that for yourself? So I invite you now to take the time to be and feel and notice your thoughts, notice and consider where they might be coming from. And absolutely, if you're caring for people and children and young people, it's important that we're protecting them and making sure that they're living well and content and happy. But it's your holiday period too. It's time for you to experience that celebration and festivity and not be consumed by all the has to, must to. And sometimes we can, ask people to help. It's not always easy, and sometimes they don't always do things how we'd like to, right? So sometimes it's about letting go, allowing people to do things in the way that they do it, and for now, that's fine. It's good enough. It will do, and not being consumed with getting everything perfect because it's perfect in whose opinion. Um, so yeah, check in with yourself. Are you managing? Are you regulating your emotions? Are you okay? And if not, what do you need? Are your basic human needs being met? Are you fed? Are you watered? Have you been to the loo? Those kind of things that you forget to do because you're just doing, and so busy. So ask yourself if you're at those pinch point moments or you're about to flip your lid because there's too much going on and you're overstimulated and overwhelmed, stop. Take a breath and ask yourself, what do I need? So this is an exercise that you may or may not be interested in doing. Some people like to write stuff down, some people like to be creative or use their devices, but this is an exercise that you can consider when I was saying about asking people for help, is those stresses that we carry. And sometimes we have so much stress going into this bucket here or container, whatever you want to name it. We've got lots of stresses or things to do, and if we don't, like the bath, pull the plug out or turn the taps off, it will overflow or we'll snap or we'll lose ourselves. So it's thinking about what stresses have you got going into your container? Are they all yours? Is everything that you've got to do, have you got to do? Have you got to do? Could someone else do it? Can it wait? Will the world stop turning if it doesn't get done today? Can it be a tomorrow? Can it be a next week? And sometimes there's things, of course, that we can't change. There could be really painful experiences going on within the family that we can't change. and we have to experience, sit with, and learn to accept. And that can be really challenging. So, of course, it's not minimising anything that you may be carrying or your family may be experiencing at this time of year. It's very emotive. And our containers, it says there that it varies on life experiences. That can change daily as well. Our container one day could be huge, loads of room in it because we've had a good sleep, we've had good balanced diet and meals, we've had connection with loved ones the day before, we had a good laugh, feeling good about ourselves, feeling positive, things going in the right direction. And then something could happen and the size of that container shrinks to a thimble and we can't cope with anything else, not even hearing someone's challenge from their workday is too much. So just think about your container. How do you turn the tap off or take the plug out? What do you do that helps you manage your stresses? Is it helpful? Sometimes it might be having a little bit of a binge on Netflix and some chocolate or a little tipple. And that's fine in moderation. But if we do that as a go-to, that's not necessarily healthy or helping. But A, identifying, B, sharing, and C, working through it is the key to managing that stress and asking for help. You know, sharing is caring for yourself. So by asking for help helps carry that load or just enables you to be validated. Because yeah, there is stuff that sometimes we have to carry, especially if you're a single parent or if you've got caring responsibilities for elderly relatives or adults that need your support. That can be heavy. And it's okay to admit that it is heavy at times, and to just be heard and seen and validated can make that lighter and make you feel better about your situation and if you're coping or not. And then you can access those other services or people might jump in and give you the support that you need. So it's an opt-in. You don't have to. It's there. It can induce stress by writing it down and think, oh my goodness, and that and that and that. So please, if you feel it's going to be overwhelming, you don't have to do it, of course, but it's just an opportunity to write down, does this belong to me? Does it need to be done? Who can help? And how can I release that pressure? What can I do to stop that from overflowing? So, as I mentioned at the start of the session, um, there's a lot of financial pressures at this time of year too. And Medway Council have a whole various web pages, but a whole section on the website dedicated to support and financial welfare. So please do visit those pages. We will put the link in the description of the video for you to explore the support for cost of living help and household support. So there's lots of different links, telephone numbers on those pages dedicated to that specific support during this time, as well as a dedicated various pages, but a whole section for housing advice and prevention of homelessness too. So please do access those pages that give you specific information to the various services or organisations around Medway that can help you during in those situations if you're experiencing any challenges or crisis to do with that. So this image is about co-regulation, and I mentioned earlier about are you regulating your emotions? So that's about are you noticing when you feel like you're coming up to a peak, or if you're riding the waves and you're a bit all over the place, and that's fine. There's no shame. You're human. We all have levels of coping that vary, and at this time of year it can be more challenging because of the pressures, the changing routine, the chaos, the hyperactivity or hyper-reactivity. So if we are able to notice our reactivity, we can choose to respond. And that's not always easy because we're human. But by managing our emotions, reinforcing or setting boundaries to help us manage our emotions is key to us preventing any storms, or if our loved ones, our children and young people are in a storm, They're out of routine, they're overstimulated, they've got new toys, lots of stimuli or films, and also sugary treats that aren't necessarily helpful. Food colorings can cause that hyperactivity, and their blood sugar levels are all over the shop, so that affects their ability to manage their emotions. So yeah, those boundaries on, you've had enough chocolate today, darling. Let's think about spreading that out across the time. We don't want to be meanies, but also we don't then want to be mean by reacting to their hyperactivity. And also then, if we're busy and we've got to do the turkey and we've got to do, oh, and we've got Auntie so-and-so coming over, and no one needs still to go pick that up, and then they pop up at a crunch moment, we don't want to take it out on them, and sometimes we do. So we're thinking about managing our storms, and also if they're in a storm or they're hyperactive or hyperreactive or hypervigilant because they've got lots of different people coming around or they've got to go lots of different places, we think about how we can meet their storm with our calm. And that's where co-regulation happens. And co-regulation is the way that as human beings, we connect and we mirror behaviours. So I don't know if you've ever been in a social setting, or it might be professional or family setting where you think, oh, something doesn't feel right. It's called mirror neurons in our brain, for any scientific people out there or analytically minded people. Mirror neurons, and that's what helps us know if we're safe or feel unsafe or be calm and cool and enjoy a moment. So it's that if we're hyper vigilant and we're not too sure how things are going to go, we kind of get that sense and people react to that. So when we're thinking about reacting, if we're calm, if we're loving and we're coming from a good space, then everyone else kind of feels that. And that isn't always the case, especially for neurodivergent members of our community, adults, children, young people. But you know yourself, you know whether you can be available to meet someone with a calm, and if not, tap out, ask some other adults around you to take the role in being calm to co-regulate with our children and young people. Or if some of our adults around us aren't in that space and you can see they're in a storm, allow them some space to be, allow them to step out and you step in with the calm and managing different situations. So it's applying kindness to yourself, to our children and young people that are hyperactive, they're out of routine, they've got lots of different treats, stimuli going on around them. But it's the same for adults too. Lots of socialising. It can be very exhausting, lots of things to think about, remember and do. So if you're in a storm or feel a storm brewing, choose to respond, take a breath and come down and try the co-regulation approach for your loved ones, for other adults and for your children and young people. But sometimes you haven't the energy, and that's okay. But in order for our relationships to be fruitful and mutually satisfying, then we do need to have those kind of boundaries and ways to communicate and, like I said, tap out or apply kindness and allow us to be human. So this image, I think, just sums it up nicely, and it's an opportunity to consider if you see a storm or feel a storm brewing, choose to respond, choose co-regulation. And if that's not possible, you can step out or you can offer that space for the person to come down and to regulate their own sea. So what is emotional health and well-being? I've been speaking about it throughout. This is a definition which is basically how we think and feel and describe ourselves and interpret the world around us. So it's not just about feeling good and confident, but it's about feeling that you belong and that you're engaged and supported and have that strong sense of self-esteem within the world around you and your community. So what I would like you to think about is, how do you nurture your own health and well-being? What improvements can you make? How do you nurture your children and theirs? And what could you do different? Do you need to say no more from taking on too much, from wanting to please everyone and everyone to have the most perfect experience and sacrifice your own? So sometimes saying no, it's hard in the beginning, but it's so freeing and necessary to manage your own. If you remember that storm, perhaps by saying no, or I'd love to, but actually I've got so much on. Can I do it another time? Or could you ask somebody else? I'm really sorry. I hate to let you down, but I would be so overwhelmed and I wouldn't, do the best job that I could for it. So it's thinking about our physical health, so not just our nutrition, but our thoughts and feelings and emotions all contribute to our quality of life and our emotional health and well-being. Um, so yeah, how do you nurture yours? Are you mindful of, you know, what you eat, being active, getting out and getting some steps in or taking some breaths? Are you mindful of what you watch and listen to and read? Because that can impact on our well-being. There's lots of things going on across the world that's really hard to understand and accept. So thinking about that self-care and that space and balance of enrichment, um, to think about how you nurture is really, really important. And then how do you model that to your young people or people around you? Um, and what opportunities do you give them to nurture their own? So what can you do to support them with that? It's really tricky for a lot of our young people, especially our adolescents. They're coming out of that infancy and getting that independence, but still they only know what they know. So that can be really tricky. But the main focus here is how do you nurture yours? Because you can't pour from an empty cup. How do you make sure that actually you've got a good sense of self-esteem? You feel positively engaged and held, and you feel like, you belong and have a good quality of life. So if you consider your quality of life, what improvements can you make? Your physical and emotional health and well-being, what can you do to nurture it? If you struggled with answering that question on what you can do to nurture your emotional health and well-being, then I'd like to introduce you to the 5 Ways to Wellbeing. This is our local campaign. It's scientifically proven on managing our mental health and well-being. So the same principles, 5 fruit and veg a day for our physical health. These are the principles and ways to manage our mental health and well-being. So you've got here give, keep learning, be active, take notice and connect. So give, sometimes this time of year that's all we are doing. So are you giving yourself time? Are you giving yourself space? Are you giving yourself love and care that you're in abundance offering everybody else? What about you? Perhaps that's a way to consider it this time of year. And to keep learning. So that's that reflective practice. And when we're thinking about co-regulation, if you're not able to do that, or if you forget to do that, that's fine. We learn from those experiences. We might lose our stuff and we might, bite the head off of loved ones or react rather than respond. That's okay. We learn from it. So it's minimizing the shame and guilt or anything else that you're carrying to move forward, to develop your own relationship with yourself and with your loved ones. To be active, exactly what it says on the tin. It's really easy to go into hibernation mode this time of year, isn't it? I get it, it's dark, it's cold, it's usually damp in the UK this time of year. But we can still be active indoors. We can put some music on, jump around, or we can put on the right clothing and get out and brave the elements. By moving, we release endorphins in the brain, which is the feel-good hormone. It helps reduce cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, which can lead to poor mental health and conditions, as well as poor physical health conditions. So moving, that can be in any way, like I said, having a dance in the kitchen, but getting some movement in our bodies is paramount. And to take notice. There is changing of the seasons, so you might notice the autumnal leaves on the floor now, the trees are bare, but there's beauty in that. It shows the cycles of life. So yeah, those simple things of taking notice and getting, joy from, but equally take notice of when you're feeling good, when you're in your element, or when you're happy, what are you doing, or who are you around? So could you do more of that? If it's healthy and it's enabling you to live well, to feel good, take notice of what you're doing in those moments and to connect. So that could be with our loved ones, it can be with others, can be out with Mother Nature when you're getting that time, if you've chosen to tap out and step out, connecting with nature and just being present and at peace. Could be prayer, could be meditation. So it's individual to each of you. But these are the 5 ways for us to ensure that we're managing our mental health. So this is a little activity or diagram to perhaps map out your current ways that you manage your health and well-being, if at all, against the 5 ways to well-being. So if you consider each of the strands that go to each of the ways to well-being as a spoke on a bicycle wheel, the middle is a 0 and the top where the word is 5. I'd like you along each of those lines to score yourself where you think you are in meeting that way to well-being. So 0 is not at all. I don't do anything that I feel would enable me to take notice, or I'm not active at all. And then 5, like, yep, I do that every day. I'll go for a walk, or I'm very present and mindful and I take notice of, people feel good or things around me and take joy in noticing things on my walk or on my journeys. Or I'm always learning, I love to crochet or do new recipes or take on Duolingo challenges, etc. So plot yourself on these strands and then join the numbers on the spokes. So if you're a 3 for everything, that's going to be quite a smooth ride actually if that's a wheel. But if you're a 1 here, a 4 there, a 3 there, a 5 there, that's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. So it's thinking about that balance and that healthy balance in the ways that we meet the ways to well-being. Again, you don't have to total opt out, opt in. It's just a suggestion for you to have a bit of reflection on, do I meet the ways to well-being, don't I? And how can I improve on? Or if 1's a 0, what could I do differently to bring that score up? That's in alignment with your capacity, lifestyle and resources around you. So it's just a suggestion there for a bit of a reflective practice on you meeting the ways to well-being. Okay, so I've been hopefully reinforcing throughout this session that we won't always get things right, and sometimes we will flip our lids or we will react rather than respond, because we're human and so will the people around us. So it's remembering, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but what do we have in our mindsight? What can we remember and consider and learn from those moments of not being able to cope or just being human and flipping our lids? So we can name it to tame it, so we can actually think back to a situation that was a pinch point and we reacted and think, do you know what, I've really overwhelmed then. And we can get into a bit of a cycle of beating ourselves up, think I should have, and shoulds are quite harsh and they're heavy, but I could have asked for help or I could have said no to that, but I didn't, and that's okay. So for future, if a scenario like that's brought to you again, you can choose to say no, or you can choose to say, I'd love to come along to that, but I've got so much on that week, I just think I'll be exhausted and I'm going to burn myself out, but thank you so much for the invite. What did you learn from it? Was it helpful? Was it kind? Was it necessary? What else? It's just those mindsights. Journaling can be hugely beneficial, or just having that space to digest, rest and digest, reflect, get to know yourself. So that learning can be learning about yourself, learning about your capacity to cope. So if you have, that insight and those mindsights, you can communicate that with others and you can prepare yourself to step into situations in the future feeling more resourced, more confident in your ability to A, manage, and B, communicate what you can and can't offer to others, to look after yourself, and that is okay. So these are some information on various support services locally and nationally. We do have our single point of access in Medway that you can call 24/7 for anyone that may be experiencing a mental health crisis. These are qualified, trained clinicians available to support you to know what services or ways to manage the person experiencing a mental health crisis. We also have a talking therapy offer in Medway that you can have access to counselling. That could be over the telephone and online. And then we have the national release, the Pressure, Mental Health Matters, the Samaritans, and their information is on this slide too. There's also, if you are living with a mental health condition, the NHS have dedicated web pages to think about implementing ways to wellbeing, because we can have health conditions and still live well. The same as a physical health condition, we can still have a good quality of life. So the NHS have web pages that are in alignment with various mental health conditions that can enable you to maximise your well-being. And then we have pages on the Medway Council website that I will show you next. So this is your kind of one-stop for local and national services. Again, on the Medway Council web pages, we will pop the link below. This is a dedicated section on mental wellbeing. So there's various things you can scroll down on this page to find out ways for you to get support in a crisis or to manage your mental health and connect with and get that sense of belonging, connection, and a good quality of life. So thank you so much for choosing this video. I hope it's been helpful. I hope that you can apply the kindness to yourself and that you enjoy the festive period, and there's the services available over that time of year should you need to connect to people outside the family and this service. Take very good care of yourself.